Hey there folks, it is me, RandomJosh, and I'm back again with another Random Monday video. Today I wanted to kind of bring something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about a particular book that I have here, and this is called Gay Man Talking, All the Conversations We Never Had. So this is by the incredible Daniel Harding, who is someone I know through people, someone that I follow on Instagram, Twitter and all that stuff, recently posted about this book, and I saw it and I was like, oh, that actually sounds quite interesting. So it's basically a book written by Daniel, of course, just regarding different conversations that we as gay people often either have or that we don't have, and that we should really be thinking of. I'm still only part of the way through this book, but I kind of prefer it that way just because this means that because I'm going to be kind of taking apart little pieces of this book and showcasing it to you. So I didn't want to give you the full spiel. I want you to still go away and have something to actually take away and enjoy from this. So, I mean, just kicking off really with the introduction, like the first line literally is, do you ever look in the mirror and think, who the fuck are you? Constantly. Me too. I think like that's such a realistic and like, it's such a big thing that none of us really ever think about, is like identity to all of us is such a big and crazy weird thing. For all of us in the community, it's kind of like, you know, you have your time pre-coming out where you don't actually fully understand or know who you are, and that's like a really confusing time. And then when you do figure out who you are, quote unquote, because I don't think, you know, there's elements to us that we probably never really fully figure out, and we're always constantly growing and developing. However, I think, you know, during those kind of phases, it can still be really confusing, and, you know, life is such a crazy journey. And I honestly think this book captures it so well. So one of the first, I don't really know whether you call them chapters in this, but the first kind of segment is all around conversations with parents, which again, for me personally, I thought it was a really interesting take. Like for me, I'm out to my family, they all know. Similar-ish experience with the book of, you know, how one side seemingly took it better than the other, but then the other has actually kind of upped and whatever. It's hard to explain it, but the book really does explain it well. But yeah, it's just nice to kind of read up on some of the things like that I didn't even think about. Like when we come out to our families, we often, you know, it's all about how I feel and, you know, I want to feel accepted, you know, but you never really ask the other question of, well, how did you actually feel? Like, you don't ask them that kind of question and start up those kind of conversations about, you know, actual feelings and actual facts, which this is honestly bringing. Like, it's so hard to describe it, but like, it's making me question some of the things that I have done potentially in the past. Like, I think a lot of the times I look at my parents and I think, you know, gosh, like they've handled this whole coming out situation far better than some have. So I can't, you know, discredit them for that. But then there's also times where I'm like, you know, eye roll. That's one of the things they mentioned in there, you know, that classic parenting eye roll situation. Whenever your parents tell you anything, you go and kind of have that like, oh, eye roll. And that kind of goes across the board. But yeah, it's just getting someone else's perspective, I think really kind of solidifies and kind of makes you feel I don't want to use the word normal, because I think normality is such a weird concept that like we've created in this world that doesn't really reflect accurately on anyone. I don't think anyone's normal. We're all different. We all have different interests. We all have different ways of thinking. So yeah, normality is probably not the best terminology to use. But yeah, there's just some incredible pieces in here. So one of the pieces in this book here is actually an extract from Judy James. There's quite a lot from Judy James within this book, which again gives like another kind of perspective and like some really interesting quotes there. So Judy James states that rejection of any kind hurts, but when it comes from our parents doing it, because of something that isn't a choice, it can feel downright cruel. We all crave and need unconditional love, and our parents should be the ones supplying that stability in our lives. So, you know, even though some people may go through some really intense rejection from especially loved ones, there's nothing that's going to change the fact that they will crave that kind of attention, not the attention, but the love and acceptance from said person, you know. And it's such a difficult thing for anyone to really go through, but I think it really gets captured beautifully in this book. Again, I'm trying not to give too many like nuggets of spoilers in the book, but I do want to just kind of touch on like a few little points and some of like the key elements from this to really try and, you know, get the point across of why this is a really, really interesting book to read, and why I'd recommend it as well. So then we go on to talking about conversations with a sibling. Again, for me personally, I obviously have an older sister. I don't think we've ever really fully spoken about me being gay or anything like that. Like, it's just kind of like an unspoken thing, like, yeah, you are the way you are, and that's fine. I like it that way. And that's kind of, again, somewhat similar to what is portrayed in here about, you know, almost the forced nature of coming out, and that kind of feeling like from the sibling perspective of almost anger and annoyance at the fact that because coming out to a lot of people is such a special moment. It's that kind of moment of trust, it's that moment of vulnerability, and to have that snatched away can be really quite detrimental, which is something again that they talk about in this book, because of the way that Daniel had to go through that kind of coming out period of life. And again, a lot of these conversations can be really difficult to have. So seeing someone else talk about them and seeing kind of like the approaches that they took, it's, again, there's no single right way of doing any of these kind of conversations. These conversations are so unique and specific, but just to hear them, it kind of gets your mind thinking. Like, as soon as I picked this book up and started reading, I think within like the first couple of, you know, pages, I was like, this all just is making my mind think in different ways. So there's always been that preconceived notion in my mind of how life should be, or like how my life is, and like how other people's, because we often, let's be honest, we all see people on social media. Social media is the biggest like annoyance at times, because it's one of those things that showcases life as, you know, everyone has this perfect, amazing, crazy life, and you never see the like struggles, basically, because who wants to really put their struggles on bloody, you know, social media? 9 times out of 10 people are gonna, you know, want to see you out drinking, you out, you know, having friends and living it up with your family and things like that. So a lot of us like sit there and see this and kind of create this almost fiction in the head of that's what normal is, or again, the normality curse. So yeah, seeing someone else talk openly about kind of difficult conversations, the struggles of these kind of times, makes you kind of question and feel like, okay, maybe I'm looking at life in a slightly different lens, and maybe I should start looking at it in a different lens, if that makes sense. And then we also have a really amazing section of the book about conversations with friends as well. So one of the biggest things within our community of friendship groups, like we go through phases basically of, you know, wanting to have more friends to kind of pad out what you're feeling inside basically, and to kind of give you almost like a barrier, especially when you're in schools and facing things like bullying, having those kind of supportive friends around you no matter what, like having basically people that maybe aren't technically friends but like they are friends. It's weird. So like almost having them there as like a bit of a barrier, how that kind of can grow and change, and you start going through different stages of, you know, actually realizing that in terms of friendships, it's not always the quantity of friends that you have. Like you could have thousands of friends. Like most people on social media now have, you know, they're like, oh, I've got, you know, 2, 3, 4,000 plus friends on Facebook, or, you know, followers on Instagram, friends on Snapchat, whatever. And it's like, well, how many of those are actually friends? Like when you break it down, how many of those people genuinely are friends? Or how many of those people are just people that, you know, you've spoken to on a one chance and that's about as far as you've gotten. So it's all about that kind of side of things, and also about, often in the community we also face things like, you know, being labelled as the GBF and things like that, and some people, you know, flourish on that stuff. Other people are a little bit like, oh, cringe. It's a bit like, you know, demeaning almost. I think that's a really interesting conversation to also have with, you know, friends, because I've never had that with any friends of mine. I've never brought up the fact of, you know, I don't really like being referred to as that kind of stuff. So it's, again, just bringing those thoughts into your head and presenting them in such a way. So I also just wanted to touch again back on the point regarding the parent section. So having this book, just foremost, it actually inspired me to have a conversation with my own mother and, you know, talk about these kind of situations and things. So I told her about, you know, the book, and I know she's quite an avid reader herself. I am not as much of an avid reader as she is. I often get too distracted and cannot sit myself down for long enough to really enjoy and get into detail with a book, but I've been managing really well with this book. But we got talking about some stuff about, you know, the coming out situation and her perspective on that, which I've never really thought about and never really addressed, because it was a weird situation which I feel like I've probably spoken about previously. But it was nice to just actually sit down and have that conversation and open that kind of door up to future conversations. So she's already kind of gunning for, as soon as I finish reading this, she's going to be having a read herself. So hopefully, I know there are some interesting topics such as conversations about love, conversations about sex, body issues, role models, dating. So I mean, we'll see. I guess I haven't got to those stages yet, but we'll see what she thinks of this also. But yeah, no, honest to God, amazing, amazing book. I could not recommend this anymore. Whether you are part of the community yourself, I think, you know, this is quite a nice way to talk about some of these kind of conversations and get, like, one of the key points as well is, like, you know, sometimes it is hard for us to understand and find one another, people who are similar to us, and though some of these, you know, conversations may not be entirely relevant to us, it kind of opens up a kind of thought process into a new perspective. And I think that's the brilliant part of this book, to be completely honest with you. So yeah, if you are part of the community, or even if you know someone who is in the community and you just want to, you know, learn a little bit more about it, would highly recommend it. So yeah, I will be leaving a link, of course, for the book down below in the description. I'll also be leaving links to Daniel's social media so you can keep up with the latest and see what else is potentially coming in the future. Who knows? I can't speak on their behalf, so but yeah, amazing book. Definitely recommend. Anyway folks, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy and find some insightful information from it. I certainly have been getting highly informed from this book, so we love to see it. And yeah, I will see each and every one of you folks in the next video. Peace out, bitches.